Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. Jaded Blossom's Christmas release for 2023 is now available. Jaded Blossom's October release is filled with so many fun Christmas items. The first die set is called Large Lollipop Die. This is the freebie you'll receive if you purchase at least $60 worth of product, and one item must be from the new release. The freebie is only available for a limited time and while supplies last. There are two stencils in the release. The first one is Holly Berries. There are two stencils you'll layer together to create this beautiful background. The second stencil is Christmas Lights, and there are 3 layers in that set. The first stamp set is called Candy Cane Lane. There are lots of really fun sentiments. Reindeer Stables, North Pole, Reindeer Crossing, Santa Stop Here, Candy Cane Lane, North Pole Express, and many others. And the sentiments fit on the new North Pole sign die set, and I'll show that here in just a moment. The next stamp set is called Reindeer Feed. More really fun sentiments, perfect for the holidays. The smaller sentiments will fit on the Gnome Dies sign add-on set, and the larger sentiments work perfectly with the Build-A-Boot dies. The final stamp set is called Nutcrackin Christmas, and there are coordinating outline dies. Lots of really fun Christmas and Nutcracker themed sentiments. Have a rockin' Christmas, let's get crackin' Gnome, you are an angel, hope your holidays are warm and fuzzy, peace on earth to all Gnomies, and several other fun sentiments. There are several new die sets part of the release. The first one is called Build a Wreath Die. There's the large circle frame, so you can use that for the foundation. And you can add all the different foliage and sprig pieces to create a beautiful wreath. The die set also includes a pretty bow. The wreath fits beautifully on an A2 size card, and you can also have a gnome peeking through the wreath. So that's really fun. The next die set is North Pole Sign. You can use the main sign piece and add the sentiments from the Candy Cane Lane stamp set. The set includes the sign. It has a few little snow pieces that you could put on the top of the sign, at the base of the sign, the sentiment North Pole, and even a couple of fun icicles. Even though it's called North Pole, I think this would be a great set to use year-round. There's a new Build-A-Boo set. This is Christmas add-ons. There's the sentiment North Pole. We have a string of lights, a string of Santa hats, and also Santa and some of his reindeer. Plus there's a small bow and some mistletoe. This is the perfect set to decorate a fun Christmas booth. The final die set is a new add-on for the gnomes. This is Christmas add-on set number 3, since last year they released sets 1 and 2. This set includes pieces to build an angel, there's a toy soldier, a drummer, and you can also turn the toy soldier or drummer into a nutcracker. There's also an adorable reindeer balloon, a Christmas wreath, a sweater hat and a sweater dress. There's a little star. There's a new mustache and also a teeny tiny reindeer that you can decorate the sweater dress or hat with. I have several cards to share with you using the new release. For pattern paper, I'll be using an assortment of Sunny Studio collections. I love their papers. They have lots of bright and cheerful colors. So let's go ahead and get started with card design number 1. I selected a tone-on-tone red gingham paper for the background. I'm adding a stitched oval die cut, and I used a tone-on-tone gray pattern with snowflakes. For a little extra sparkle and detail, I'm putting some Love from Lizzie peel-offs at the very bottom of the card. This is the silver holographic color in the pinstripe style. I'll wrap the ends around the back. Then I'll layer this piece on a slightly darker red cardstock. Put ATG tape on the back and add my card front onto a card base, leaving 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. All of my cards in this video are American Standard A2 size, 4 1/4 inches by 5 1/2 inches. This card will be featuring the new Lollipop die set. I cut out 3 lollipop backgrounds from some white shimmer cardstock. Then I selected 3 solid cardstock colors, a light pink, blue, and green. I'll just adhere all those pieces together. For the pink lollipop, I'm also adding a fun swirl. Now I'll flip them over, put foam dimension on the back, just behind the lollipop portion, not the stick. The pink lollipop will go in the center, green on the right side, blue on the left. I want the stick of the pink lollipop to be a little bit longer, so I'll first trim off the bottom portion, and I'll adhere it down just a little bit lower, leaving a gap between the stick pieces. I'll put glue on the back of the lollipop sticks, hold them in place, and the final piece I'll adhere is the very bottom of the pink lollipop stick. It looks a little odd right now, but that portion will be covered up with a bow. I cut out the bow from the same red cardstock that I used for the background layer. There are 3 pieces for the bow. I'll adhere all of them together. Then I'll put some foam dimension on the back side, remove the release paper, and add the bow in front of the 3 lollipops. Now I'm covering up that gap of the pink lollipop stick. I'm adding a little extra detail to my lollipop bouquet. I used the fun curly Q die images from Jaded Blossom's Poinsettia Die set. I cut them out from silver holographic cardstock, so they have this beautiful sparkle. Now I'll just tuck all the little pieces behind the lollipops and the bow. Some of the pieces I will trim off the very bottom, that way they're not sticking out quite as far. I love Jaded Blossom's Poinsettia die set, and the little curly Qs are a fun addition. Just a couple more to adhere behind the lollipops. I've already stamped and cut out the sentiment, Sweet Christmas Wishes, and this is from a Jaded Blossom set released last year called Sweet Christmas Wishes. I thought it worked perfectly with the lollipop bouquet. I did pop it up with some foam dimension, and I'll adhere it at the bottom of the card. For a final finishing touch, I used a white gel pen to add a few highlights to the images. So there is my finished card, and since I love to make multiples, I did make 2 using this design. For card design number 2, I'm creating a little snowy scene. I'm using the leftover gray tone-on-tone snowflake paper for the top of the card, and I'm adding a snowy hill at the bottom. I used Jaded Blossom's border set number 2 for the stitched hillside, and the snow is white shimmer cardstock. I'll place an acrylic block on top for some added weight while the glue dries. Now I'll start assembling one of the gnomes. This is a boy gnome, and he'll be dressed up as a nutcracker. I use white cardstock for the very background piece, although many of those areas I do end up trimming off. I'll first attach his beard. Next I'll adhere the hat. And I did trim off the sides and top portion of the traditional gnome hat. Now I'll add the other pieces to decorate the hat. I used dark blue cardstock for the main hat, a lighter blue cardstock for the trim, red cardstock for the little decorative feather, and some silver mirror cardstock for the medallion piece at the center. I cut out the new mustache from the same gray cardstock as the beard, and used a slightly lighter gray shade of cardstock for that bottom portion of the nutcracker beard, the little goatee area. For the inside of the nutcracker mouth, I used the same light blue cardstock. I'll glue the inside of the mouthpiece down first, then the mustache and the little goatee. The nutcracker is wearing black shoes, and I did pop them up with some foam dimension. Now I'll assemble his little staff. Not sure what that's really called, but it looks like it has a Christmas bulb at the end. I used silver and blue pearlescent cardstock for it. I'll adhere his hand at the very bottom, and I'll also put foam dimension behind the light at the top. Then I'll put glue on the back of his hand and part of the staff and adhere it in place. I'll set the gnome aside and start working on the sign. I cut out the main piece from some brown cardstock, use light blue cardstock for the sign, and I've already stamped Nutcracker Toy Shop. I use silver mirror cardstock for the very top and bottom of the pole. For the diagonal stripes, I'm using red cardstock. It's the same shade as the red feather he's wearing. Then I'll add some of the snow at the top of the pole, top of the sign, and also a little bit accumulating around the bottom of the pole. I love all the extra little pieces Jaded Blossom included in this set, like the snow for the top of the sign and the top of the pole, plus the adorable little icicles. I'll add the icicles after I adhere the sign onto the card. I'll flip over the gnome, put foam dimension on the back, putting slightly thicker foam dimension behind the top portion of his shoes. Then I'll remove the release paper, add my gnome on the right side of the card. He's just hanging out, sitting in the snow. Now I'll put foam dimension on the back of the sign, and I'll cut some smaller pieces to put behind the pole since it is fairly narrow. I'll remove the release paper, put the sign on the left side of the card. Now I have just a few more pieces to add. I already have foam dimension on the back of the icicles. I'll remove the release paper, then I'll tuck them in underneath the sign. I'm putting the double icicles on the left side and the single icicle on the right side. Next, I'll glue down his other hand. For the little snowdrift at the bottom of the sign, I have foam dimension on the right and left side, and I'll put glue behind the area that sits at the bottom of the pole. For embellishments, I'm using some star gem stickers that I have in my stash, putting 2 in the upper right-hand corner, 1 on the right side of the sign, and 2 in the lower left-hand corner. They do have adhesive on the back, but I'm also adding a small drop of glue since I'm not sure how old these are. I want to make sure they stay in place and don't fall off later. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. For card design number 3, I have a strip of gray tone-on-tone wood grain design from Sunny Studio, and I want to add a little extra color, so I'm using Distress Oxide Vintage Photo Ink. I love all the bright colors in Sunny Studio collections, but one of my favorite collections of theirs is called Subtle Gray Tones. It's perfect if you want just that little hint of gray, or you can add some extra color using ink. I'll adhere that piece at the bottom of some gray and white polka dot pattern paper. For a little separation and shine, I'm adding a Love from Lizzie peel off between the 2 pattern papers. This is the brown color with gold overlay in the pinstripe style. I'll wrap the ends around the back, layer this piece on some dark brown cardstock, put ATG tape on the back, and add my card front onto a card base, leaving 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. For this card, I'm using the new Build a Wreath die set. This is such a fun set. I'll first assemble the bow. I used the same cardstock. One side has a pearlescent finish and the other is a solid. And I love how from the one piece of cardstock, I get 2 different shades of pink. I used some brown cardstock for the circle frame. Most of it will be covered up with the foliage pieces. Now I'll start adding one branch after another, just following around the circle, and I am overlapping the pieces. That will create a fuller looking wreath. I have one more long branch to adhere. Then I cut out 2 other foliage pieces using lighter shades of green cardstock. I love being able to dig through my cardstock scraps when using die sets. The pieces are too small for layers on my cards, but they're perfect for all these tiny little die cuts. I'm trying to decide which portion of the wreath I want as the top. Then I'll add the other branches on the right and left side, leaving an area at the very bottom where I'll be adding a bow. I cut out 3 of the pine cones from some dark brown cardstock. It's the same cardstock I use for the background layer. I'll tuck them underneath some of the leaves. Put one on the right side, one on the upper left side, and the final one will be on the left side, sitting next to the pink bow. After I've added all of the pine cones, I'll put glue on the back of the bow and adhere it at the bottom of the wreath. I also cut out a bunch of berries from white shimmer cardstock. I'll add all of those on the wreath. It's fun that the die set has different sizes of berries, so they're not all perfect little circles. I have just a few more berries to adhere. With all the tiny pieces, it does help to use a pair of reverse tweezers. I have one final berry to attach. Put a drop of glue on the back and tuck it underneath a light green leaf on the left side. So there is my wreath all assembled. I think it looks so pretty with the pink bow. I'll flip it over, put foam dimension on the back side, making sure not to put it in any area that it'll show through on the front. I've already assembled a little girl gnome. She's wearing the new sweater dress in pretty pink and has an adorable pink winter hat. The hat is from Jaded Blossom's Gnome Winter add-on set. The gnome will be peeking through the wreath. I'll first remove the release paper on the foam dimension, then I'll put the gnome through the wreath. The little pom-pom at the top of her hat will go in front of the wreath. I'll add just a little bit of glue behind the pom-pom of her hat to secure it to the wreath. I'll put some foam dimension on the back side of the gnome just behind her hat. Put glue behind the rest of the area and adhere the wreath and the gnome on the front of my card. For a sentiment, I'm adding Merry Christmas, and I'm stamping it directly onto my card, so I am using a mini Misty. The ink color is dark chocolate from scrapbook.com, and I did ink up the sentiment a few times to get a nice solid impression. Next, I'll use a white gel pen to add highlights to the gnome's hat, her nose, and also the bow. Then for a final finishing touch, I'm adding a little bit of sparkle to the white berries using Nuvo Glitter Drops, the silver crystals color. I'm putting just a small drop on one side of each berry. And I'm also adding a little bit of shine to the end of the pine cones using Nuvo Jewel Drops. This is the Cocoa Blush color. I've had these bottles for years, so I'm not sure if they're still available. So there is my finished card, and I did make two using this design. This is one of my favorite cards. Now moving on to card design number 4. For the background of my card, I have a bluish teal tone-on-tone pattern paper with lots of stars, layering it on some dark teal cardstock. I've already assembled most of the little girl gnome. She'll be dressed up as an angel. She's wearing the new sweater dress and also the hat that has the halo at the top. I use white shimmer cardstock for her dress and hat. I use gold pearlescent cardstock for the halo and also the star that she'll be holding. And I use white glitter paper for her sparkly wings. I have foam dimension on the back of the star. I'll attach her hands, flip over the star, add more foam dimension, then adhere the star in front of the angel. Now I'll flip over my angel gnome, put foam dimension on the back. I've already adhered it and removed the release paper just to save a little time on this video. On the background of my card, I'm adding a stitched oval vellum die cut. This is where I'll be adding the angel, but first I'm adding a few blue pearlescent clouds. And the clouds are part of Jaded Blossom's rainbow die set. I'll add the two larger clouds at the bottom of the oval. I tried not to put adhesive on the area of the clouds that go off of the oval, at least not yet, but I did end up getting a little bit on the left side. So after attaching the gnome so she's sitting on top of the blue clouds, I picked up the oval to put adhesive on the back, and I did tear part of the pattern paper on the background, but that's okay, it'll still be covered up with the clouds. I'll put glue on the back of the oval, just in the areas behind the die cuts, then I'll adhere it to the card. I'll add a smaller cloud in the lower right-hand corner one in the upper left-hand corner, and I do have them going off the edge of the card. I'll flip over the panel, use my scissors to trim off the extra. I'll add one of those extra bits of the cloud on the right side. I've already stamped and cut out the sentiment, "You are an angel," and I did put foam dimension on the back. I'll adhere it in the lower left-hand corner. For a final finishing touch, I'm using a white gel pen, adding a few highlights to my gnome and also the clouds. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. For card design number 5, I'm using one of the new stencils. This is the Holly Berries. I'm starting with the stencil layer that has all of the foliage. The ink color is Spruce from Catherine Pooler. I'm using craft cardstock for the background. I love stenciling on craft cardstock. It gives the card a completely different look. I have the piece of craft cardstock in Waffle Flowers mini stencil mat. To make sure the stencil doesn't move, I am adding a couple pieces of Scrapbook.com's mint tape. Once I finish with the foliage piece, I'll add the berry stencil. The ink color is Catherine Pooler's Rocking Red. Using the same pieces of mint tape, I'll secure the second stencil layer in place. And using a blending brush, I'll fill in all the little red berries. Some of the lighter ink colors don't pop against craft cardstock, but I think the red and green look so pretty. I have just a little bit more to stencil. Now the fun part, removing the stencil to see the finished look. I'll trim down the stenciled panel to 5 inches by 3 3/4 of an inch. I'll layer it on some green cardstock that's pre-embossed with little polka dots. This is scrap cardstock, but I believe it's made by Basil. At the bottom of the card, I'm adding a couple of wavy borders, one using the same embossed green cardstock and the other in red. And the dies are from Jaded Blossom's border die set. I put double-sided adhesive tape on the back of the wider border and glue on the back of the narrow border. They are a little bit wider than my card panel. After adhering them in place, I'll flip over this panel, use my scissors, and trim off the extra. Then I'll put ATG tape on the back and add my card front onto a card base, leaving 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. Next, I'll add a large stitch circle die cut. I used a light tan gingham pattern paper. I did cut out a second circle die cut, adhere the two together just for some extra stability. Now I'll add an adorable Santa gnome. The Santa hat and boots are from the Christmas add-on set number 1, and he's holding the new wreath image. I used some red pearlescent cardstock for the bow. There is a die included with tiny little circles, but I decided to use some Love from Lizzie peel-offs. This is the mini circles style in the gold glitter color. I stamped the sentiment "Santa Stop Here" on the sign portion from the North Pole sign die set. And I did pop it up with some foam dimension. For embellishments, I'm using some glitter enamel dots from Pink and Main. The green color matches beautifully with the green cardstock. For a final finishing touch, I'll use a white gel pen and add highlights to the Santa hat, the gnome's nose, and also the boots. And since I do have some leftover stenciled paper, I cut a narrow strip and I'm adding it on the inside of the card. Now moving on to my final card design. For the background of my card, I have some tone-on-tone star and snowflake pattern paper. And at the very bottom, I've added a little snowy hill. Using some wood grain pattern paper, I cut out the booth. I'll put glue on the back and adhere it to the front of my card. Using Jaded Blossom's winter die set, I cut out 2 of the icicle borders. They're wider than the booth, so I will need to trim them down. I'll hold one of the borders at the top of the booth, find a good area around an icicle, and trim the very corner, trying to make it look natural. Then I'll do the same thing for the second icicle border, this time using the other side. That way they're not exactly the same. I'll adhere them in place using some glue. Next, I'll add the Santa and 3 reindeer piece, and I cut this out from some blue iridescent cardstock. I have foam dimension on the back. I'll remove the release paper and add that die cut piece at the top of the booth. I've already assembled a little girl gnome, and she's wearing the sweater hat and sweater dress in pretty teal. She'll be holding one of the adorable reindeer balloons. I used dark brown cardstock for the background piece of the balloon, although all of that area will be covered up. I used dark brown cardstock for the top of the head of the balloon, a light tan cardstock for the face of the reindeer. I cut out the balloon string from a dark brown cardstock. I have a lighter brown cardstock for the antlers. Use white and black cardstock for the eyes. Black cardstock for the mouth. And I decided the reindeer would be Rudolph, so I do have a red nose. When adhering the black portion of the eyes, I'm trying to get them positioned the same so one eye isn't looking off to the right and the other to the left. Next, I'll adhere the mouth, placing it low enough so there's enough room for the nose. The final pieces of the reindeer balloon are the inside of the ears, and I use some light pink cardstock. I think the new reindeer balloon is absolutely adorable. Next, I'll attach one of her hands so she's holding the balloon. Now I'll pop it up using some foam dimension. Put one piece of foam dimension behind her hand and the rest behind the balloon. Now I'll attach my little girl gnome. I'm putting foam dimension just behind the top portion of her feet and also the top of her hat. Then I'll adhere her on the front of the card. Now I'll add the balloon. Before adhering the reindeer balloon, I'll first add the small reindeer embellishment to the front of her dress. Just putting a small drop of glue on the back side. Now I'll add the reindeer balloon. Then I'll pop up her other hand with some foam dimension. For a sentiment, I've already stamped out Merry Christmas. I used Jaded Blossom's sign add-on die set. I have foam dimension on the back. Put glue behind the little string that holds the sign, and I'll adhere it on the left side of the booth. To finish off the card, I'll use a white gel pen, add highlights to the gnome, the reindeer balloon, and also a small dot at the very top of the string of the sign. Make it look like a nail or screw. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. Now here's another look at the 12 cards I made using Jaded Blossom's brand new October 2023 Christmas release. There are so many fun products in this release, perfect for making Christmas and holiday cards. If you are interested in any of the products I used in this video, I do have links provided in the description box below. Jaded Blossom never disappoints with their fun releases. They sell a wide variety of stamps, dies, and stencils, and all of them are made here in the US. Their Gnome Dies have become super popular, and they have dozens of different add-on sets, so there's something for everyone. For a closer look at all of my cards and the products used in this video, be sure to head to my website. I have a link in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.